Okay, great. Thanks everybody for joining us. This is hosted by the Center for Fiction, which is the only literary nonprofit in the United States that celebrates the creation and enjoyment of fiction. And we're partnering tonight with Neon Films and BAM. BAM is our neighbor, so when the world opens up again and you find yourself in Brooklyn, you can visit us both. To take over for now, I'm going to turn this over to Susan Merrell. She is the author of Shirley, the book that the film that inspired the film. So Susan, take it over.
Thanks, Melanie, and thanks everybody. I'm so glad to be here with you. It's really incredibly exciting. I'm going to start by just explaining a little bit about how I came to my project and how I discovered Shirley Jackson. And then I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions, and then we'll turn this over to the audience. So the way I came to Shirley Jackson was at Bennington, which is where she spent most of her adult life, though I didn't know it at the time. I was in grad school. I had published 2 books and was really kind of at a halting place in my own work life. I didn't quite know what I wanted to do next. And I went up to Bennington to the writing seminars with my husband to give a talk. And while I was there, I sat in on some classes and I thought, this is really what I need to do next. And I went up for my first semester, and my first teacher, it's a low residency program, so you have 1 mentor a semester, said to me, what do you want to do? And I said, I really want to write about women's lives and magic. And she said, well, have you ever read Shirley Jackson? And I had read, I think, We've Always Lived in the Castle as a teenager and nothing else. I knew The Lottery, and I went home for the semester and I started reading Shirley Jackson. By the end of the semester, I had read absolutely everything she had written. I went back up for my second semester. My new mentor said, you know, what are you interested in? What have you been doing? And I told him, and he said, you know, she lived here for her entire adult life, and her house is right outside of campus. And I realized I'd been walking past her house every day when I went out for my walk, and that I'd been getting coffee at Powers Market where she got the idea for The Lottery, and that somehow she and I had started to find each other. And then I did what Sarah later did. I went down to the Library of Congress and I started reading her journals and her unpublished manuscripts, and I got in touch with some of her children, and I just was trying to find a project to do with her because I was so interested in her humor and her intelligence and who she was and how she thought. And for several years, I really was just immersed in her life and art, but I didn't quite know how to tell a story. Was I going to write a biography? Was I going to write my search for Shirley Jackson? I just really didn't know. And then one day I was walking in the woods near my house with a novelist friend, and I said, oh my God, what if somebody went to visit Shirley? What would that be? You know, how I could then tell the story of this marriage that starts out so incredibly and ends up so strangely codependent and artistically perfect, but emotionally difficult. And from there, the book wrote itself incredibly quickly. And how we got to here is my question for you all, which is, how did you each first come to know Shirley, and was she always meaningful for you? Sarah's the first person in my lineup, so I'll ask Sarah first, and then Josephine, and then Elisabeth. We can go that way.
That's kind of how we all came to the project, so that makes sense.
Well, we could talk about how the movie came together in a minute, but I would say just the Shirley Jackson of it predated your novel. And it was really only in talking about the film and being asked this that I remembered. So first I read The Lottery, you know, like everybody did in high school, and you don't ever forget it. But I don't know, when you're in high school, you don't really think larger works, and you know, I wasn't like pursuing Shirley Jackson or anything. And then when I was in college, we did this thing where we adapted We've Always Lived in This Castle for performance.
Oh, did you?
And
Oh.
yeah, it's just a school thing. And it was I think that was when you had to kind of like stand up and say the words of Shirley Jackson that she really started to get into my nervous system. And then obviously I'd read Haunting of Hill House, but really hadn't read anything else, and definitely hadn't read Hangsaman until reading your book and starting in on this project. So yeah, it was definitely, there was about a 15 or 20 year gap between the time that I first discovered her and then really kind of got into her and this project.
Great. And Josephine?
Yeah, well, for me, I had this, also, yes, of course, the lottery stays with you for so long. And then I had picked up, ironically, at an airport. We've always lived in the castle. We've always lived in the castle. And I just fell in love with that book. I was stunned and blown away, and so excited by it, and finished it and was like, I'm going to read everything. I can't believe I didn't realize that Shirley Jackson had written these novels. I have to read everything she's written. And literally, I think a week after I finished the book, a friend who worked with Sue Nagel, our producer, and who'd been working with Sarah on the script, called me and said, hey, we have a script about Shirley Jackson. We think you might be a good fit if you want to read it and pitch to us. And they were talking to a bunch of directors, and I was like, yes, I can't believe this. And the script is obviously incredibly good. And just did all the reading I could before that pitch, and came in and tried to share a vision. And yeah, but Shirley, infected me. Then I spent that whole year obviously reading your books, Susan, and then reading all of her, just like as much of her work as I could. And I think her work was obviously a big impact on the movie, had a huge impact. I think the end of Hangsaman really, we talked about it so much in terms of how we thought about the end of this film.
Oh, so I'm gonna, at some point I am gonna ask you about the end of the film, because as I'm sure keeps happening, there are so many questions, but we'll get to that. Yeah, because I would love to talk about that. And Elisabeth?
Yeah, so I knew Sue from working on another project, Sue Nagel, and she had kind of been like a mentoring producer for me. And I don't know if that's why they thought of me for this, but I was sent Gubbins' script, and it was like the best script I'd ever read. It's just like incredible. And then I was like, well, I'd love to be in this movie, but I'm sure they're never going to cast me in it. And I when I read the script, I felt it was kind of pitched as like a biopic, and then I was like, oh no, this is a Shirley Jackson story, like which is, now that I've read your novel, like I know that's what that is, and this is so interesting and so different, and that's how it became sort of the anti-biopic. And then I heard about Josephine and watched Madeline's Madeline, and was like, well, that's a really interesting and cool idea. And I just sort of like waited, like like hoping to get the part, and being like, here I am. And I'll never forget when I got the email saying that they wanted me to do the part, and I was just like, I'll literally never forget that moment, being in a car and getting that email. I was just thrilled, because I knew that this was like a role of a lifetime, and to be in this script and work with Joe is just going to be an incredible experience. So that's how I came to it.
So the one thing I really want to say right here is just how incredible the film is. It's astounding to me what you all did, and I feel very much as if I was responding as a writer to what I felt about Shirley's work, and about who she was, and what she wrote, and how she thought, and then Sarah's script was so amazing, and then what Josephine and everyone else did, and what you did, Elisabeth, as an actor. I feel like I now am part of an artistic lineage rather than a person who wrote a book. And because of that, I have this kind of complicated question, which is a process question that I want to ask, which is that I'm curious, having read the script and been on set for, I think 3 hours that were so astounding to me. I just didn't know that was how movies were made, you know. Was the and the wine bottle scene that you were working on. But so I'm curious about how the writer's vision, and in this case I mean Sarah's vision, not mine, the director's vision and the actor's vision work together on set. Like, is there any particular scene that you can recall where you all played a shaping role that feels a kind of particularly meaningful as a piece of artistic process? Is that like a
I remember vividly, Lizzie, I imagine you might be thinking of the same thing, the cliff. Are you thinking?
Yes.
I was gonna say like every scene, so I'm glad that you had more specificity than me. I was like, I don't know. We worked on every scene together. Like it was a group effort every day. But yeah, go ahead with Cliff is a great example.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you said that, Lizzie, because I always in the interviews, everyone's like, you know, what is it like to work with Lizzie and Michael? And I feel like I learned so much from you and was so grateful that we really set out to have a process where you guys really were partners in the blocking, you know, in defining the way that we told this story, because we wanted it to emerge from your bodies and your instincts. And I think this being a dialogue-driven movie, you want this to feel rich and full, and not just, you know, you sit here, you walk there. Like that would be a really lame way. But I remember vividly, we had the cliff scene. I don't want to give anything away, so I don't. But at the end of the movie, there's a scene on a cliff, it's one of those scenes that just stunning on the page, like worked so well. And then we got into the scene, and we were like, shoot, like it's not.
Didn't work.
It's something doesn't. Yeah, it didn't. And we all felt it. I think. And I remember Lizzie being like, what is it, something I'm doing? And I was like, no, it's not you. I was like, it's the scene. It's something like, and we were, and Sarah came running down, and
I was like, we got to rewrite it.
And I kept like running into the forest and then running back out of the forest, like that. Lizzie's character Shirley does, because I was like, I've got it. I was like, if I can just think what she's thinking right now, I'll figure it out. And then Lizzie was like, well, I had this instinct to stand next to her, not behind her. And I remember getting chills, like when she said it. I'm getting chills right now, because it was like the whole kind of thing of the movie is these two women like in this power dynamic and this separation between them, and then to put them together side by side on the cliff. I'm like tearing up. I mean, it was just powerful, and it was, and you put them together in like the climax of the film, and they're facing this, you know, the precipice of death, which is kind of a giant metaphor for really the precipice of maybe being irrelevant or never achieving your dreams. And that image just, whoa, it worked.
I mean, I think that just came from honestly probably me being like, I need to look at her, like I need to look at Odessa, I need to be able to look in her eyes. Like it's difficult to act to the sort of the back of someone's head. So I was like, I need to be able to look at her and just like following that instinct. But I will say it felt like I could name like 20 of those experiences, Susan. Like there were so many times when it felt like, you know, we would be blocking out a scene and Michael would have an idea and then we'd fix something or change something, or we'd go for something else. Joe would be like, try this. And then talking to Sterler, our incredible DP, and being like, well, what about put the camera over there maybe? And then like, I'd go outside and talk to Sarah and be like, I think that like this is like maybe the better way of saying it. She'd be like, yeah, great. Like it just felt like it was really, we really all feel like we're, I think, also a part of that artistic lineage that you talked about, Susan. Like the book that you wrote became the script that Gubbins wrote, became the movie that Joe directed. It all kind of morphed into something that was truly a collaborative experience.
And what's so wonderful about that is that Shirley herself was so immersed in, you know, mythology and folklore and Freud and Jung, and, you know, she was also digesting and you know, I can't get the word right now, but, you know, expelling, you know, material that was familiar to her. And so that process just feels so beautiful. So Elisabeth, this brings me to a question that I know you've been asked a million times before, but in this context, people always say that you are an actor who largely works by instinct, and you use that word instinct. And I wonder what that means versus, so is it, I mean, are you in the character walking around? Were you Shirley Jackson as you were walking around, or were you saying, this is what's right now, what I should do now? Or is that?
I wish I had an answer for you, Susan. I really don't. I have been asked that, and I've been asked specifically about this role. Like, how did you decide to walk like that or sit like that? Or there was some stuff that, you know, I had this one recording of her reading the lottery. So I was able with my dialect coach, incredible dialect coach, to kind of work on that. And then Michael took his dialect. We all did. We all worked on our dialect off of that. So there was some stuff, and then we had photos, and of course there's like material that you can read. So we had some stuff, but then in the end, it was just kind of, it was incredibly instinctive. It was just this, like, I don't know, I felt that I had this like herniated disc, and so it like made me feel really uncomfortable, and like I was in pain all the time, and I really was in pain all the time. And I was like, well, that probably works. That's kind of Shirley-ish, and so I'll do that, you know? And then I was like, and I felt I had this padding to make me look a little bit more like Shirley. And that made me sit a different way and walk a different way and act a different way. And it just kind of all happened, right? Like, I feel like, Joe, like, it just like happened.
Well, yeah. And you made a very defining, I mean, even before all the costume went on, when we did my weird warm-ups the first day, and I remember you being like, I don't think Shirley moves very much, you know?
Yeah.
Which is also just Lizzie being like lazy, by the way.
I believe I will not move that much.
I'm like, I feel like she doesn't move that much. I'll just be over here.
Yeah.
Okay, that was defining though, because I think it really all the other characters do dance around you in the film, and they're trying to find their center, but you kind of are the center around which everyone is defining themselves.
Yeah, and also it's all in the script. Like, not to blow smoke, Sarah, but like, it was in the script. Like, I felt like when I read the script, I saw who she was. That doesn't always happen. It's not always like that. Sometimes you do have to invent it. But what I read was what I did. That was in the script.
That's great.
Well, I'm gonna call you out because you embarrassed me. So
Trying to give you credit. Trying to give you credit. Girl.
I know. Good job. But the thing, I think I know why, having watched Lizzie work on set, there's something, everyone calls it instinct, but she's actually she's very fearless, or she is maybe a little bit of an adrenal junkie, because she likes to be free. And she likes to know enough, but not know other things, so that when she's in a scene, it feels so alive. And that is like, who does that? You know, everybody wants to be even more prepared. They don't want to be in the face of like the unknown. But Elisabeth is an actress that is like, no, it's going to be okay. Give me enough, and I'll take it home. You know, so that was always wonderful to. And she was always so afraid that I was going to yell at her for not saying the words. But
thanks, Gubbins. Now embarrassed.
We'll never find out.
Job.
Good.
So a question that I keep getting asked, and I think my internet is having a little problem, so if I freeze, somebody else take over. But
no, you're fine.
Okay. So a question that people keep asking me in the last 11 days is, you know, when I conceived of the relationship between Shirley and Rose, I was really, in my mind, Rose didn't have a proper family. She didn't have a mother who mentored her correctly. So what she was seeing in Shirley was a way to live as an adult woman, and you know, sort of that she needed a mentor and she needed a mother. But in the movie, the eros of that relationship becomes much more the foreground. And that has made me think a lot about the erotic quality of all relationships, sexual relationships and friendship and maternal, paternal. And I've just been really, I was so amazed by that choice, and I loved it, and I loved what happened on screen because of it. But I wondered how you came to that view of the relationship, and I think it was Sarah's vision. That when I read the script, I think I didn't realize how big a vision of big a part of the movie it was going to be. And I'm just curious, I just want to know what you were thinking and how you were thinking about that.
What were you thinking, Gubbins?
What were you?
You know, I think there's something about the premise of the book, which you started off with, Susan, which is, you know, your fascination with Shirley was like Rose's fascination, which was like my fascination. And then also a little bit of like, well, what would it be like to actually be in that house and then to try to forge a friendship? And
Right.
that friendship then kind of scurries into, you know, it just accelerates into, I want to impress her. I want Shirley Jackson to think I'm smart or funny or like delightful or something, you know, just something. I want her to think something other than I'm a stupid cat, you know?
Right.
And I think that was the feeling of as being a writer and just trying to think through what that would feel like. I mean, who doesn't feel Eros or whatever you said about like in a deep intellectual, you know, way? I think the ways that crushes work is, you know, there's the crush of I want you to like me, or
right.
the crush of I want to be you, you know, and it feels very confusingly the same. But I'm not going to take full credit for all of it. Yeah, sure, the scenes were written, but then when Josephine came on, you knew that was going to be part of the film, because there's nobody that looks at female desire in all its complex ways more delightfully and like kind of perversely in some ways, and that's not a judgy word, Josephine, but like ways that are totally unexpected than Josephine. So I'm going to blame her, and then Lizzie for being so gay.
No, I mean, so do you feel like that was something that you sort of pulled even farther? I mean, it's just, I loved it. I mean, because I think you touched on something that's really real and true about the way we love people. And I think, Sarah, what you just said is exactly right. When we admire someone, we get kind of blurred about whether we want to be them, love them, learn from them, what we want. And that to me is this essential thing in this movie that just blows my mind. You know?
Wow, that's beautiful. Well, I think also Sarah's script had there was an erotic touch to me. There was an erotic touch even to the scenes that are not necessarily sexual, but the mushroom scene, which is such an important scene in the film, has this. I remember reading it, and I think when I pitched for the movie, I was like, this is a sex scene. You know, I know how to shoot this. And it was so exciting to get to walk into that. And then obviously it was like, I felt so honored in that we had Odessa and Lizzie to like bring that to life and to really, because I think one of the things I appreciate about the way the eroticism is in the movie is that it is still subtle, and it's about, it's not about seeing, you know, between these two women, at least, it's not about seeing these like anything pornographic. It's more about the depth of a connection and how this like the delicate nuance and the sensitivity and the power of a desire. And you know, I remember when we shot there was a scene where Rose and Shirley are playing footsie under the table. Right. and it was so funny because the props were so complicated for those dinner scenes, and we started the scene getting really like hung up on like, okay, when are we gonna pour this wine, and then we have to get the lines right, and and I was like, oh no. And then Lizzie, you remember this, but I started crying, which was so embarrassing. But I was just like,
I don't remember you crying.
Oh, good. You don't remember that.
I know.
I'm so glad. But it's because I was like, but this is supposed to be like a sex, because it's a footsie scene. I was like, this is supposed to be a sex scene, and we're worried about the wine glasses, you know. And then
I probably don't remember that because I was probably also frustrated. I was probably like, also like, it's so stupid.
Well, I think you were like, well, tell us, you know, you were really encouraging. You were like, well, what, you know, share your vision. And then we talked about the vision for a while, and how we had been doing a few silent takes on some of the scenes, just to kind of get into our bodies first, because Sarah's dialogue has such a strong trajectory in it that it was exciting to also like just let the scene breathe in the movement first and help us find the blocking. And then and so for that scene, I can't remember who, like I was just, we were like, let's do a silent take as the first take. And there was such a beautiful, you know, obviously unspoken connection between Shirley and Rose in that moment, and a lot of the shots on Lizzie and Odessa that we ended up using in that scene are from that first silent take, actually.
Oh, really? Oh, that's
Yeah.
so cool. That's so cool. So I did want to ask about the ending, but can I not ask? Do you not want to talk about it? Because I
mean, I don't know. Do we want to ruin it for the viewers? I don't know. Everyone's seen it. Theoretically, if you're at the Q&A, you've seen the movie, right?
So if you
I
haven't
think so, yeah.
So if you haven't seen the movie, put
Close
your
your
mouth.
ears. Yeah.
Mute us.
Yeah. So I mean, so Shirley and Stanley's ending is, you know, so clear, and the question that people keep asking me is, you know, is whether Rose is even real, which is so, again, so interesting to me, because I can see that that might be an interpretation that one might have. And I like that there were sort of 3 different endings for her. I mean, there are really multiple storylines endings for her. It's sort of a choose your own adventure, but what, I mean, was that what you wanted, or did you, and Sarah and I were talking about this earlier, she knows I'm asking this question less for myself and more for the people who are asking me this question. What did you want people to believe about Rose at the end?
I definitely have a thought, but I'm curious what Sarah's thought is. I can share mine. I guess I'll share mine.
You go ahead.
Well, when I read Sarah's script, I had that feeling very strongly at the end that when they leave, I remember reading the script and being like, oh, it has to just be this like super wide shot, even though actually we ended up doing close-ups on the Rose leaving, but that I was like, you just want to let them leave as if they were always characters in Shirley's story. Right. And it felt right that they, because you do, they came into the life they left when she finishes the book, and I think when we were editing the film, it was really problematic and hard to figure out that ending. And we did it. I mean, I tried like 10 different ways of editing the ending, and I remember that for what we ended up, we had originally, it was that we had Shirley's ending with Stanley. I'm trying not to give anything away. Whatever, I'll just give it away. Yeah. Shirley ends with Stanley. She's finished the book, and then you see them leave. Then you see them leave. We had it that way, and then we got the note, I think which was the right note, which is like, we really have to end it on Shirley.
Right.
And then I was like, well, how do we? I just like I remember like not really knowing how to end it on Shirley and make it as nuanced with Rose as I wanted it to be. I was like, well, they just can't just leave. Like they just leave. So I remember staying up until like 2 a.m. I just stayed at the edit suite alone until 2 a.m. and I got this nice, amazing piece of music from Caroline Shaw, who's a genius. And I just like went into a trance. And I was like, I just tried everything. I was like, what if we do this? And what if we do this? And then great music can really be such a guide. And so I ended up editing the way that it is now, which is that it's intercut, that Shirley really kind of sees. She doesn't just see the potential ending of Paula, but she almost sees the ending of Rose's story too on the cliff. And it was important to me that you see Shirley see Rose's end, which is the thing that makes it feel, I think, like that Rose is a character in the book, because all the endings are happening simultaneously. The ending of Paula, the ending of Rose, and it's all happening in Shirley's mind. So then when you finish with Shirley, it's like, well, who was even there in the first place?
Right.
Which is just such a wonderful idea, because of course they aren't real, and it is a story. You know, I mean, they are characters in a film, all of them, you know, played by actors. And so there's this wonderful kind of pulling back of the psychological camera by doing that. But Sarah, was was what Josephine said what you feel as the?
I'm happy for the experience, and I'm happy when I hear people say, like, I'm not even sure that Rose is real, because I got to tell you something, and I'm sure Elisabeth feels this way, having stepped into that Shirley Jackson head. It really feels real when you're trying to like figure out how to end things, or trying to figure out what happened to somebody, or it feels real. It feels real. It has to, it hurt. I saw it in your performance, Lizzie, because it's like, you have to, that's the really just demented thing about being a writer, is you put yourself in these horrible situations, and you put yourselves in horrible harm and hurt and loneliness, and it feels very real. And I think I'm delighted to hear that that's one of the responses. And I guess in some ways I wasn't necessarily preoccupied with that, because for Shirley, I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I like 100% agree. I mean, I'll take it a step further and say, like, it doesn't matter, because she got what she needed, and she finished her book, and Stanley loved it, and that's all that matters in the end. And so that, as approaching it as an actor, playing Shirley, like, it's as real as it needed to be to get that book done. That's it. You know?
Right.
Sure. Yeah, let's call it real. I don't care. The book is done. He loved it. You know, moving on. I think that's kind of what I kind of got from the script, and what I think went into the performances.
Yeah. So
well, I was just going to say, when Josephine and I were prepping the script, and there was so much about, she really pushed me to figure out how to kind of embody and visualize what was happening in Shirley's brain in some ways, like very specific images. And I would say that it was Josephine's idea to have the same actor playing Rose and Paula, which was huge. And then the other thing too was, when we're in, like, there's a bathtub sequence where Shirley's kind of trying to think about what's happening in her book, and the Rose comes in, which again is I remember Josephine suggesting this and kind of dreaming this up. That feels as real as some of the other scenes in the movie to me.
Yeah,
so.
Totally. Absolutely. Absolutely. Like, sometimes in my head, things were so real when we shot the movie that it's like, I hear people talk about it, or people have questions about the movie, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's like, my experience of the film is so real, that the idea that they're not the same person is like, oh yeah, I guess they're not the same person. Paula and Rose are two different people. Right. I forgot that. You know, it's like, I have my own kind of experience with the story.
That's so great.
Well, and there, one other thing about trust, I think, was that I remember when we were finishing the film, we were coming to the end in the last shots, and we were shooting that final scene between Shirley and Stanley. I remember Sterling and I were like, what do we do? What do we shoot? We don't know how to shoot this. It's such an important scene. It's the end of the movie. What do we do? We were like, well, let's just start with Lizzie's close up, and we'll figure it out. We don't know what else to do. And I was like, oh God, I'm not a visionary. I don't know anything. Like, and then we sat, and then we set up the close up, like in the middle of the table. The camera's in the middle of the table. We pointed it right at Lizzie. And I just remember that performance, Lizzie. I will just never forget that for the rest of my life. Like, watching that and being like, like, I don't have to do anything else. The whole ending of the movie is right here. It's just happened. It was amazing. It was such an amazing performance.
That's incredible. Thanks, Joe. You made my night. Thanks. That's so nice of you.
It was beautiful.
That's one of those takes that you're like,
the beginning, you know, the scene in the chair in the beginning, you know, the visually mirrors with such a different emotional affect, you know, impact.
Yeah, that's one of those scenes and one of those like close-ups and takes that you're like, you know, that the movie is like, all the work that you've done, it's all kind of come down to this moment. It's like, it's for anybody who is interested in sports, you know, it's the bottom of the ninth, and like you're it's that shot. It's like you're like, fuck, I gotta deliver, and I gotta deliver now, and this is it, and you just kind of hope that it's there.
It was there. So I have a couple of questions from the audience. One of them is, I love Shirley's response when Stanley tells her that the book is a masterpiece. She says something like, quote, "This one hurt more than the others." I think that's exactly what she says. I wonder if that resonates for each of you. Apparently so.
I know.
Well, it definitely does. I had a pretty big personal tragedy happen right before we started shooting, which was pretty intense. And I would definitely say that this one hurt more than the others. This one, and I was also at the time grateful to have a team and a project to go to, because something like that happens. Sometimes you need people.
Yeah. I would say this one hurt more than the others too. Physically, it hurt. Like I was actually in physical pain, but then also like, there was definitely stuff that was going on in my life that was affecting my world. And there was definitely, it was kind of it was like a seminal month, I think, in many ways for us. And it was a real coming together. But I also think we all really appreciated having this place to go. Even if it was so hot and disgusting and terrible and there was so much work to be done, it was a safe haven, I think, in a lot of ways for a lot of us making the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And this movie was almost 6 years in the making from beginning to end for me. So it was a long journey, and there were moments when we weren't sure that it was gonna, they talk about movie magic. You just don't know. There's a limited amount of time and resources and energy. But everybody kind of, this one was tough, but it was also, everybody was working at capacity.
So, okay. So then this next question is and I have no idea. I mean, this is such an odd question in a certain way, though it's wonderful. Also, it's if you had the opportunity to make another film about Shirley, which other part of her life would you choose to show?
All I want to do is make a Shirley Jackson franchise.
Right?
This is literally all I want to do. I've spoken to Lawrence, her son, about it. I talk about this all the time. It's all I want is I want to take Marvel down and make a Shirley Jackson franchise.
Yes.
I just feel like I'm not done playing her. I feel like there's so many parts of her life that we never got to, obviously.
Yeah.
And also there's all her stories, and there's so much room there. There's so much space there to do stuff. I truly believe that you could make 10 movies.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
About or involving Shirley Jackson.
But this does raise the interesting question of the way that time and her life are actually compressed in the world of the film.
Yeah.
So
just turning a light on.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would also say, Susan, that we talk. I know you've heard us talk about reading the correspondence between Shirley and Stanley, and their love affair.
I know, me too.
Is so fantastic.
Yeah.
And from the moment she writes Janice to meeting Stanley and then getting married and all of the mishigash that happens between that, and the letters are so funny and raunchy and fantastic that
Yeah. So that was actually where I started. I mean, that was for me the place where I wanted to focus, but I wanted always to have it in the context of where they ended up. And then I became so sort of fixated on 1964. And when you tied the movie to 1950-51 instead of 1964, that seems so brilliant to me, because you were really you were finding the tautest way to tell this story. I know they always talk about film as a kind of a compressing, having a compressing impulse, and I really see that in what you did. So that question actually raises as many questions as it, the answers are all, there are a lot of ways to look at it.
Just like Shirley Jackson did. She always raised a lot of questions.
Right.
Yeah. There's also all the raising the kids and the hilarious stories about raising the kids, which would be so. Lizzie, I mean, you got to make this franchise happen. Everyone wants this.
That would be
Who's in?
I'm in.
When we go back, we're getting an air conditioner this time. That's the only thing.
Yes, we are.
Goddamn air conditioner. The only thing I ask.
Lizzie actually named the air conditioner, the one air conditioner that
Oh
we
yeah,
did
what
have.
was it called? I couldn't remember.
Then she would stand right in front of it, and she would say, and then we would be like, Lizzie, we have to take the air conditioner away. We're about to start shooting it. She'd be like, don't take away, I don't even know, little Freddie or whatever this thing's name was. She was like, don't separate me from my.
I would literally like drape myself over this thing and just be like, I love you. I love you. Such a good boy. You're so good. You're doing so good. And they'd take it away and I'd be like, goodbye. I'll see you soon.
There was really just one air conditioner on the entire set.
Yes, Susan. Yes.
That's terrifying. And it just
Movie making is glamorous. It's
Very
really glamorous.
glamorous.
Oh my God.
Location.
And Lizzie was
Did
in a
not
fat
know.
suit. Lizzie's in a fat suit, so you can imagine, like, she's basically like just like a giant sweat bomb. I'm
And
sure.
like a wig and like.
Yeah.
So I have a question. Your makeup, your makeup, I mean, you have the most beautiful skin in the world, and Shirley's skin is not
Thank
beautiful.
you.
That
Thank you and thank you. No, yeah, we had an incredible hair and makeup department, and I had actually my makeup artist I'd worked with on her smell as well, and we did stuff to we did stuff to my skin to make it look a little bit more age appropriate for what we thought Shirley should be, and we put this stuff on my skin that was really great idea she had that kind of made it so that like I've got stuff, but like it just made it so that when you did that, there was more of it. It just amplified it. And then we just put like some age spots and stuff. And then that was like, it was pretty much no other makeup, right, Joe? Like it was just like.
Yeah, it was really simple. It was that, whatever that amazing, it's like this clear stuff that just enhances, it makes you look
like a little bit worse.
And it just makes you look worse and have deeper wrinkles. And it was great.
Yeah.
So we have another question, which is, I would love to know your interpretation about what Shirley really feels inside about Rose. I think this is for Elisabeth, what's between the lines, and I don't think it's these lines. Does she in reality want to be like her, or does she see herself in Rose? What do you think?
I think it's all of those things. I don't think there's any wrong answer about how she feels about Rose. I think it's everything. And that's what's so interesting about what's in that script is that it is everything. She hates her. She despises her, truly.
Right.
Looks down on her, like thinks she's an idiot.
Right.
Loves her deeply, is attracted to her,
right.
Respects her, wants to be her, wants to control her, wants to be controlled by her. I think it's everything. It's everything. She sees her as Paula. She sees her as Rose. She sees her as a pawn in her game and as a tool to use to get her story out there. And she also deeply cares about if Rose is going to be okay. And if Rose is going to raise her child the way that she wants to raise her child, and if she's going to have a life where she's not answering to this husband of hers who's sort of silly, and I think that as beautifully as Logan played it,
right.
That she has that opinion of that character. I think so. I think the answer is she's all of those things.
Yeah, I think that's true, and I can't really figure out how you managed to communicate all of those things.
Well, with these ladies, I didn't do it by myself. You don't do any of this by yourself is the thing. It's just, it's not a solo sport. Like it truly was with these two women here who really helped me and supported me and guided me through it. I didn't have all the answers. So.
Right. And then there's this last question, which is, there is this wonderful wickedness that Shirley emanates. How did Elisabeth summon that and then display moments of tenderness toward Rose? Any challenges in conveying these layers? This is the last question, and then we'll wrap up. So,
I mean, it's in the, that I gotta say that's in the script. So it's like, and then that's something that Josephine and I were in love, obsessed with, that idea that she could be one way and be another way the next minute. And I think, and so I'd love for somebody else to contribute to the answer as well, but I think that we just feel like that's how people are. People can right? Like people can do that. People can be wicked and then loving the next, right?
Right. And they're much more interesting if they are. I mean, wholly bad people are just not that interesting.
Yeah, I mean, we even went through experiences on the film times where, you know, we would fight, or we would disagree, or we'd want to do this and want to do that, or like someone would be upset or something, and then we'd love each other and be like, this is amazing, we've done the greatest scene I've ever created, and then be like, this is shit, this is never working. And I mean, that's just right, like that's the way it's done.
That's the way
That's
it is.
one air conditioner problem, probably. That's what it is.
Yes.
So this has just been absolutely wonderful. I got to ask every question that I have, and I hope other people got to ask the questions that they wanted as well. And thank you all so very much. This is just absolutely just such a dream come true to hang out with you a little bit. And thank you for what you did. So
thank you,
Susan.
Thank you for writing the book, literally.
Yes, and thank you for being so like loving and flexible and open to our interpretation of it. You've been just so supportive, and it means a lot that you are on board with this wild project. We're so grateful.
Thanks a million. So Melanie, do you want to come back, or do we? Yes. Okay.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you all. It's an amazing movie. If you haven't seen it yet, I hope you'll go watch it. I'm going to go watch it again. Good night, everyone. Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good night.